In 1952, on July 4th, there was a woman by the name of Florence Chadwick. And she attempted to be the first person, the first even woman to swim the Catalina Channel of the coast of California. And so she's in the water and she is swimming, as the story goes, around for about 15 hours. But understand, the conditions are horrific. It's foggy, barely like 1 inch over the surface of the water. She can't see anything. The water is completely cold. She can't even see the boat that is following behind her, that is having rifles in his hands to keep the sharks away from her as she swims the coast. And so as time goes on, 15 hours and 55 minutes later, she just yells to the boat that's around her, "Get me out of the water. I'm done. Get me out." And they proceeded to pull her out. And as she got in the boat, to her folly, she looks and sees that the coastline is only a half a mile away. She sits there and wonders, and she's asking herself, how did this happen? What did this look like? What went wrong? And as she was processing these things, she was like, how could I not have finished? How could I not have known that I was so close? And she engages with the reporter after and says, and they're having a conversation, and she says, look, I'm not here to make any excuse, but if I could have seen the shoreline, I could have made it. If I could have seen the shoreline, I would have made it. See, you have to understand is that the reason what happened as it goes on that she couldn't see the shoreline was because the fog was thick. And as the fog was thick and hovering close to her as she was swimming, she became disoriented. She lost her confidence in her ability to what she trained in. She became scared. She, forsaking the encouragement that was around her, she began to doubt the things that she knew, the calculations, the training, all the while because she couldn't see the shoreline. If I could have seen the shoreline. I believe many of us today say the same thing. If I could see the shoreline, if I could just see God, I could have made it. If as we swim in the waters of life, fog hits us. Whether we bring the fog or if life itself bring the fog, but it hits us and it starts to cloud and hinder our vision of seeing God. Yeah, that's good. And so in the midst of us swimming in the waters of life, what happens is that we begin to doubt God. We doubt because the fog is in our devotion with God. And so we become scared. And we lose confidence in the ability that God has given each and every one of us. We start to lose sight of the training that he has imparted in us as we sit under his authority. And we say this to ourselves, Lord, if I could have seen the shoreline, if I could have seen you, I would have made it. But the fog became, it caused the uncertainty. Fog caused the unknown in the distance, unknown in how long we need to keep going. And so what we do is we say, pull me out. Pull me out. And we get pulled out. It is my belief that this passage speaks to us. It encourages us and reminds some that, get this, when you are devoted to God, you will see God. When you are devoted to God, you will see God. And if we could, draw your eyes to Matthew chapter 5, verse 8. And Jesus continues the Beatitudes, and he says, blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Now, I want to talk a little bit about what does it mean to see God? You may have this question. You may ask, what's the purpose of seeing him? How can I see him? What does that even look like? Because God, get this, is not like a physical matter. It's not like you can see him as I can see you and you can see me in the flesh. What does that mean for us here? Understand in the language, when it says to see God, it is to notice him. It is paying attention to the things that are around you. It is to experience God in all of life that is around you. You are aware of his presence. You are paying attention to the things that are happening in our lives. And understand this, it is beautiful to know that what's beautiful is that to see God really gives purpose to life. Okay, understand this. To see God gives purpose and meaning to life. Why? Because you start to notice when you engage with God, when you see God, you notice your sins. You notice your sins because there was an encounter at some point, whether in a coffee shop, in your car, after a church service, you name it. When you think back to the moment you gave your life to the Lord, there was an acknowledgement that he is holy. I am sinful. Apart from him, there is no life. Therefore, I have meaning and purpose because I declared my life to him. That's right, man. Okay? So to see God gives us meaning and purpose. And if you don't see God, if you haven't seen your sins, if you haven't noticed him and experienced how holy he is, get this, I hate to ruin this for you. Life means nothing, no matter what kind of job you have or how much money you have. Because last time I checked, I haven't seen a U-Haul following a hearse. So yeah, how do I actually see God? You know, you ask the question, well, okay, I get that. How do I see him? You know, what hinders us from seeing God is that it's not that God is not present, because he's omnipresent. It's not that he doesn't exist, because he exists in all things, right? It wasn't that Florence Chadwick couldn't see the shoreline. The shoreline was there. But I think for us that we miss God because the fog set in is because we want to see God in the big moments of life. We are waiting for the Red Sea moment. We're waiting for the burning bush moment. We're waiting for the Mount Transfiguration moment. We miss God because we're looking for the big moments. But I'm here to submit to you today that God can even be seen in the mundane, boring, ordinary moments of life. Well, how do we know that? Because God's fingerprints is on creation. He created all things, and all things are through Jesus and for Jesus. And so for us to say not to see God means that we are choosing, or there's fog in our devotion that keeps us from seeing him. Why? Let's give a little example. You go, just look at the trees. One of the beautiful things about Colorado is that there's this time of the season where you see the trees go from bright green to this beautiful yellow and orange. And you look, how is that being? Because God's fingerprints is on his creation. You see the birds, you see the flowers, you see the mountains in the backdrop of creation, and you just say, wow, you can see God when in people, because people are creative. They have arts and they know how to think of beautiful things, whether it's poetry, whether it's painting, whether it's building, you name it. You see God in people's actions towards one another, our words towards one another. Get this, you see God in situations, doors open that you have no clue how it opened because you were not qualified for the job that you got, but somehow you got the job. Or get this, he shut doors when you didn't want the door to be shut. Because I submit to you, you live life, there's moments where you cry and you be like, man, I wish that door was open. Only a while to have a couple of years later, you go, praise God, he shut that door. You be like, oh, I dodged one. I dodged it. Praise the Lord, saints. Good job. You get to see God. Get this, even for those who have children, you have sleepless nights But you see God, you can see God while you're changing the diapers. You can see God while you're helping your kids with your homework. When you know they know that 2 + 3 is 5, but somehow they're getting 4, and you're frustrated. Amen. But it's beautiful when you see God and you see it click. I ain't gonna. Why is your math not mathing right now? I got 2 apples, and Johnny gave you 3 more. How many do you have? Well, you want to test your patience, do some homework with a kindergarten in the first grade. Am I speaking from experience? I might be. My bad. But here's the thing. Here's the reality. Every last one of us is going to have a meal at some point today. And even when you take your next meal, you can see God. Because it is in his provision that he provided that meal. Yeah, you went to the store. Yeah, you bought that food. Yeah, you put it in your deep freezer and you just decide to unthaw. Yeah, you made it last night. But at the end of the day, the source comes from him. So when you take your next meal, you can see God. Now, I want to deal with this here. You see God, but what is this pure in heart? This pure in heart really is come down to one with a devotion. But understand our culture, when we talk about our heart, we really talk about our emotion. Yeah. We talk about the center of our emotions, and we usually leave it at that. But in Hebrew culture, in that time, the heart was considered or to be a reference to everything. What I mean by everything, the heart was the very personality. It was the center of the emotions. It was the center of our intellect, our mind as well. It included our thought process. That's why Proverbs 23:7 said, as a man thinketh, right? As a man thinks in his heart, so is he. And so the heart is the center of who you are. That means that with all of your being, you should be pure. What is pure? It is the absence, it is the removal of impurities. So that whatever that has been removed, it is now pure and singular. And so if you put the heart and you put the pure together, what this really says is to be pure in heart means to have a single-minded or a focused devotion with Jesus. Get this, which comes from the absence of impurity. Meaning, let me say it another way. Let me say it this way. One's devotion, your devotion with Jesus is without distractions. Now understand, pure in heart doesn't mean, pure in heart has no hypocrisy. Pure in heart has no deceit. Pure in heart has no hidden motives here. And get this, pure in heart does not mean sinlessness. Okay? It doesn't mean that you'll be flawless. It doesn't mean that you won't sin. You will make mistakes. We are not what we will be one day. Our body is decaying, and each day, moment by moment, we are being transformed into his glory. And get this, being pure in heart doesn't mean that you won't experience desires that are contrary to God. Because we're sinful. We want what we want here. Don't think you losing your mind because you have this desire in you and you're like, man, I want it so bad, but I know it doesn't honor God. Get this, that doesn't mean you off the rockers here. That just means to be human. Because that's real. So what am I saying here? What does this mean? To be pure in heart is marked by transparency and an uncompromised devotion to please God in all things. And get this, in all things. And when we do that, we will see God. So that means that as you work, as you engage in relationships, as you are living life, your life is devoted to Jesus and you live and move from that place. So I'm not saying you can't enjoy things. We're going to get to this thing. but your life is solely devoted to Jesus and to please him and to honor him because of what he has done. And many of us miss it. You know why we miss it? Because here's the reality. There is fog in your devotion. There's fog in your devotion, and therefore you're not able to see God. Now get this, fog in itself is just little droplets of water that comes down on the atmosphere. And guess what? It impedes, it restricts your vision visibly. Have you ever drove in fog? You can only see so far. I don't care how bright your lights are. But how many of y'all know that it's not just the visible thing that it impedes or restricts, but it also confuses the brain? It also confuses our processes. You all probably heard the thing, I have fog in the brain, or I got brain fog. And so we have fog in our devotion, whether life happens, or if I submit to you, to be honest, probably we create or bring about the fog. But the beautiful news is that although there may be fog in your devotion that is keeping you from seeing God, if I could just see the shoreline. We're going to look at Psalms 24. And what we're going to spend the rest of our time is understanding, how do you defog your devotion? What does it look like to defog your devotion with God so that you can see God? And if you could go to Psalms chapter 24, there's 4 verses. This is going to set the tone for the rest of our time moving forward, as well as with some other supplement passages that will help us understand this defogging thing. But when you look at Psalms 24, verses 1 through 4, what we're going to see is that there are 3 requirements to defog your devotion with God. There are 3 requirements that are needed to defog your devotion. And we're going to see that defogging your devotion requires you to be holy. Defogging your devotion requires you to be undivided. And defogging your devotion requires you to be authentic. Okay? Holy, undivided, authentic. Let's read and follow along with Psalms 24, starting at verse 1 here. He says, the earth is the Lord's and everything in it. You see that? And the world, all who live in it. He founded it on the seas and established the waters. Now here it is. This talks about how God is creator over all things. Set the tone for us. So it ain't a matter that we can't see God, right? Because the text is very clear who established and who's in it, which is God. Verse 3, who may ascend the mountain of the Lord? Who may stand in his holy presence? What verse 3 is saying, who can exceed God's presence? Who can see God? And we see verse 4 tells us here, the one who has clean hands, you see this, in a pure heart, who has not trusted in an idol, they're undivided, or has sweared by a false god, really means there's no deceit in their mouth. They're authentic here. Let's look at this first one here. Defogging your devotion requires you to be holy. Understand, it says, who can see God? The one with the clean hand, pure heart. Okay? Now, understand this. That means that you and I have to be holy. And we become holy by declaring our allegiance to Jesus. Because the text is very clear, then in 2 Corinthians chapter 5:7, that anyone in Christ is a new creature, is a new creation. The old has passed away. Behold, the new is in front of us here. And so what that means is that you are separated through salvation because you have been washed with the blood of Christ. Okay? And you have been set apart to do good works here on earth for him. Now, here's what I mean by now we springboard into this holiness here, because now you're holy positionally because he saved you. But this is very important. Your holiness that is to be lived out of your salvation. Okay, let me say it this way. How you live holy daily comes from your declaration in who Jesus is. You live holy from that place, from the identity. You don't live holy to gain your identity. You live holy because your identity was given to you because it was purchased through Jesus Christ. You following with me? Okay, so that's very important here. That's very important to understand, because understand this, living holy, there is an expectation of believers here on earth how we ought to live. And we're called to be separated from the world.
That's right.
We're called, get this, because the Bible is clear. 1 Peter chapter 1, you don't have to turn there, but 1 Peter chapter 1:15, it talks about, it says, you are called holy in all your conducts. Your conduct should be holy. I'm paraphrasing here. So there is a requirement that how we ought to live holy. Look with me on the screen here. Hebrews chapter 12, verse 14. It's clear as day here. Look what it says. Make every effort to live in peace with everyone, and to be holy, and without what?
Holiness.
Without what?
Holiness.
No one will see the Lord. It's very clear. I ain't got to exegete too much more. If you do not live holy, you don't see God. So the question begs, are you living a life of holiness? Are you living a life that honors the Lord? Are you living a life that is one of righteousness? Are you living a life that declares poor in spirit? Are you living a life that mourns your bankruptcy? Are you living a life that wants to be, that is meekness because of your bankruptcy, because of your sins, because of what he has done? Are you living merciful? You get what I'm saying? All of the Beatitudes of what we just hit on. In every aspect, are you living a life of that? And hear me now. When you don't live holy, as the text says, you won't see God. And understand this. We become selective with our holiness.
Come on.
Let me say that again. We select when we want to be holy. And when we do that, fogginess sets in. Okay? Y'all don't. Let me get a little practical here. We will be holy in our speech, but our actions speak something completely different. Okay? Many of us are holy at work, meaning we treat our boss, our coworkers with great kindness, and we're gentle, and we're patient, and we're forgiving, and we're long-suffering, even though they get on your nerves, but you're going to endure because you want that check to hit on the 15th and the 1st. You get what I'm saying? So you live holy, endure such a way, but yet go home and you are short with your spouse, ornery with your father and your mother, raggedy with your roommate. We select. We want to choose to be holy here and not to be holy there. I ain't got to read Jamel. You know when you holy and when you ain't. God is very clear. You shall be holy because he is holy.
That's right.
1 Peter 1:16 talks about that. You are holy. You shall be holy because God says, I am holy. So let me ask you a series of questions, and I want you to answer this. And these are rhetorical, but let it hit you and you be honest. If God is forgiving, are you forgiving others? Are you forgiving yourself? If God is gracious, are you gracious? If God is loving, are you loving? If God is merciful, Pastor Josh talked about last week, are you being merciful? If God is patient, are you patient? Here's one. If God is impartial, are you being impartial in life? And if God looks at people with dignity and value, do you look at people with dignity and value because they're image bearers? You know the answer to those things. Maybe some of them resonated more than others. But I ask this question then, what area in your life needs to be washed? What area needs to be washed? When you wash your car, you have two options, really, if I can just surmise this thing for us. Two options. You can go to the basic car wash, you can go to the detail car wash. And what happens is that many of us go pump our gas, and when you're pumping your gas, it asks, do you want a $4 car wash? And you're like, absolutely, thank you. I will do that. My car is dirty. And so you go to 7-Eleven or some gas station, and you go through this singular car wash, and it only cleans the outside of it. It has a couple little brushes on the side, and then sometimes they don't even have a fan to blow it off. You just got to drive to let it air dry. Or you could take your car to a detail spot. You can go get your car detailed. And what I mean by you go get your car detailed, you pull up and then you get out, and therefore they are cleaning and doing things that you didn't even know what was under there. And they're cleaning the nooks and crannies, and they're wiping things off, and they're cleaning on the interior, and then you wonder, you get in the car, you're like, how did they get that off? I was trying to use Windex. But they're using certain materials that you don't have, certain tools that they don't have, that you don't have, and they're cleaning. Then they take the car through the car wash, and they got 80 brushes that are cleaning all on the outside. The scum that you couldn't get off on the outside, they're getting it off. And then not only that, they clean underneath the car. I done been to car places, they be like, you want the under part of your car clean? No, I don't want that clean. Ain't nobody seeing that anyway. But then you go through, and then they got like 5 blow dryers that is blowing your car on your dry right before you get out. And then you get your car, and you're like, man, this is nice. I didn't know they had it like that, okay? And if you like anything like me, my car's so old, when the water hits it, you're like, oh, this is beautiful. And then like 20 minutes, 10 minutes later, you're like, man, my car dusty again. The paint done right, because it's dried. Here's what I'm saying, what I'm getting at. Many of us are going to cheap car washes when we need to go to God's grace of detail and cleaning. Okay? And get this, the beautiful thing about this, oh my God. Help me, Holy Spirit, I pray I don't cry. Get this. His grace is so beautiful, he can defog your devotion. He can detail clean. And get this, in places that you think nobody wants to see, he is going to clean certain things, and he's going to get under there. But many of us are too cheap to go to him. Because we will rather go to the car wash, be really quick, and get on about our way. But when you go to a detailed car wash, they got to get all up in your business. They're going to see the 50 trips that you took to Chick-fil-A because the fries are stuck underneath the seat. And some of y'all ain't got no kids, so yeah, now what? Going to the car wash, going to a detailed car wash is costly. It's going to cost a little bit more out your pocket. And you got to pay a little more. But here's the beautiful thing about God's detail and cleaning process. He paid that for you. And it was costly. And he paid it with Jesus' blood. But you know what you got to do? You got to get yourself to the car wash. You got to get yourself to the car wash, because get this, 1 John 1:9 says that he is faithful and just to cleanse us, to purify us from all of our unrighteousness if we what? If we confess our sins. And I love what Paul says in 2 Corinthians chapter 7. He says, let us purify ourselves from everything that contaminates the body and the mind.
That's right. That's good.
Let us purify ourselves. We need to engage. We need to drive ourselves to the detailing car wash of God's grace, and he will clean you.
That's good.
So don't let your pride keep you from going. Don't let your insecurities keep you from going. Go. Get this. He already know what's in there anyway. Next, we're going to look at how defogging our devotion requires you to be undivided. Defogging your devotion requires you to be undivided. In Psalms 24, that part says you need to have clean hands and a pure heart right there. Then next it says, and he who does not trust in an idol, meaning that we don't need to be double-minded. Some of us are double-mindedness. And what I mean is that we think we can hold on to our old ways of life and mix that in with God's new way of living. And come to find out they don't really coexist. They can't coexist. Okay, many of us try to be friends with the world. We befriend the world because we don't want to be canceled. All the while we try to be friends with God. But the text is very clear that anyone that is a friend of the world is an enemy of God, because the things of the world does not want the things of God. But we're double-minded here. We're double-minded. We either got one foot in the world and then one foot with Jesus. Or either we got, if I'm being honest, we got 2 feet in the world and then we got 2 feet in with Jesus. Or we just double dutch. Back in the day, we just double dutching. We just back and forth. Or if you play football, you got hot knees. We just straddling the line. You're like, oh, this is fun. Is it? I doubt it. For a moment, yeah. And hear me what I'm saying here. Our devotion is divided. And what I'm saying is that we're devoted to God, but then we're also being devoted to the things, and you put in the blank. And get this, the things that we are devoted to, or the things that we talk about, they're not in themselves inherently sinful, okay? But what happens is that we make them, we put them close up, and we divide between the two. And so understand that God has created things that in themselves are not inherently bad, okay? So don't hear me saying that you can't do certain things. That's not what I'm saying. But when you evaluate your life, some of our devotion to certain things actually competes or is put on the same. Okay, let me talk about a few things. Many of us, get this, what are some things that we do that we're devoted to that are not inherently bad, but actually we elevate them a little bit? It's our roles and titles. Many of us are mommies, we're fathers, we're sons, we're daughters, and we elevate those things. We're devoted to them things more than God. And sometimes we dip into those titles more than we dip in, and get this, instead of living from our identity and our devotion to Jesus that actually help us to be better mothers, fathers, bosses, leaders, teachers, lawyers, you name it. Our hobbies. Some of us are more devoted to the hobbies. We are double-minded. It is our hobbies. Get this. It's politics. Politics in themselves are not inherently bad, but they become bad when you make them gods. Okay? It's okay to have an opinion. It's okay to have a perspective, but you cannot have your devotion to politics and God. You cannot. Some of it is our career. Some of it is money. Get this. Some of it is education. And here's one. Some of it is our problems. We know our problems are before us, and we're so devoted to figuring them out, yet we forsake the one who is over the problems. These things, get this, they should not cause division. They should not cause us to be undivided, but they do. They do, and they should not compete with God, but they do. And what we realize is that being double-minded, when you start to be double-minded, guess what? The fog sets in, and now you're not able to see God. Because your devotion, are you loyal or you not? Are you in or are you out? And again, hear me, I'm not saying that you cannot. I'm not saying that you cannot enjoy them things. If you hear me say that, you missed it. You missed it. An example to give us, one that helps us understand this, is Elijah in 1 Kings chapter 18. Elijah poses a question in verse 21. Let me give a little context to set this up for you. So Elijah is a prophet, and Elijah is wanting to be killed by Ahab. Ahab is hot. He's tired of Elijah because Elijah is the trouble of Israel, as the text says. And so Elijah is friends with Obadiah, and Elijah's like, let me go talk to Ahab. And Obadiah's like, brother, you about to get me killed. He has been looking for you, and I told him that we ain't found you, and you want me to go tell Obadiah that you want to meet with you trying to get me killed. What is your problem? And Elijah's like, calm down, player, calm down. God got you. He gonna be with you. Ain't nothing gonna happen, all right? Just go tell Ahab I want to talk to him. And now what happens is that Elijah has a meeting with Ahab, and they sit here and have a conversation. Ahab, he sits over here. He's like, hey, what's up, you trouble of Israel? And Elijah says, no, that ain't me. That's you and your fathers forsaken to live out what God called you to do. So don't put that on me because you're too busy worshiping Baal is your problem. And so then Elijah sits here and he comes and says, come on, let's go up to Mount Carmel. Let's go to the boxing ring of Mount Carmel because we're about to end this. I'm tired of this mess. And he says, listen, you go get all the prophets of Baal, all 450 of them, and then it's just me. Now, mind you, it's only him because Obadiah hid some of the prophets because he was afraid they were going to be killed. It was 100 of them. Put some in a 50 in one cave, 50 in another. Go back and read the Old Testament. I know sometimes it's boring. You want to skip a little Leviticus, all that stuff. But listen, understand, there's some good stuff in there. The God of the Old Testament is the God of the New Testament, God of the Old Testament here. So anyway, so Elijah goes, he goes, hey, let's go, let's do this thing. I'm gonna meet you at the top Mount Carmel, and then you bring your guys, you bring your people, I'll bring me. Because I just got God. And so then they sit here and they come up there and they meet all the people. And you look at verse 21, look what it reads here. Verse 21, he asks this question now. Because he's got all the people that want to worship Baal, and he's up there and he asks this question, how long will you waver between two options?
My Lord.
Mind you, these were people who forsook God's law. So it wasn't like they didn't know what God said. Okay, but he asked, and I love what the other version says. It says, how long will you limp between two options? And he becomes very clear. He says, if the Lord is God, follow him. And if Baal is God, follow him. It's just really simple. And then if you keep going on and reading the text, here's what's really beautiful about this. You keep on going and reading through the text. What happens is that Elijah says, all right, we about to do this thing. Listen, we going to get 2 bulls, all right? We going to get 2 bulls. We going to put it on wood, and we going to see which God can bring fire to the bull on the wood without us lighting the wood, all right? We going to do that. And so what happened is those who worship Baal, they came, they prepared the bull, and guess what? Ain't nothing happened. And so then they kept calling out to Baal, and kept calling out, and they was trying to do something, and ain't nothing happened. And then Elijah sits over here, and he get a little snarky. Listen, I don't care what you got to say. It's okay to be competitive as a believer. Because Elijah went in and said, no, what's up, player? Where's your God at? I don't see him. What's going on? You might want to shout a little louder. And you know what? Then they start shouting a little louder. He started talking trash. When I was reading, I was like, praise God. We can be competitive in the kingdom. God said don't have no other gods before him as long as it's holy, right? You know? No. So then he tells them, he antagonizes them. And he does. He's like, come on, what are you doing? He's trying to prove a point. And so they continue to call out to God. They shout louder. Nothing happens. They even start to cut themselves so that the blood can flow. They start dancing. And it says from midday to noon, nothing happened. And then time keeps going. Nothing happened. You know what I love about Elijah? Elijah said, hey, go get all them gallons of water. Come on, let's prep this thing real quick. He walked with power because he knew what time it was. And you know what he did? He sat there, he prepared the altar, cut it up. He said, now throw all that water on that wood. And you already know, you throw water on wood, it ain't going to light up. He said, throw it all on there. Throw it all on there. And they threw it all on there, and he prayed out to God. And you know what? It caught on fire. And all the people said, oh, that's the real God. That's the real God. And they cried out to him. And I got a question to ask you. What Baals do you need to burn? Amen. And understand that we don't have the physical gods that they have. But what about the God of your career? The God of money? The God of power? The God of success? The God of pride? The God of self? The God of control, God of sexuality, God of politics, and I'm talking lowercase g's, lowercase g's. What need to be burned? How long will you limp between 2? And I love what Elijah says. He's very simple. He says, look, just pick one.
That's right.
If you're going to follow God, follow God. But if you're going to follow Baal, follow Baal. Don't be double-minded. Quit going back and forth. And get this, what's so sad, and I hope this releases some of you all. Many of us know that those gods that we have, we call out to them and we run to them and we know good and well they don't do nothing for us. Yep. Amen. And we take the bait of Satan, thinking that if we indulge in these lowercase g gods, it will satisfy us and fulfill us. No, it won't. And many of us cannot see God because the fog in our devotion is that we're too busy going. We're limping between 2. Follow God or follow Baal. But I submit to you that if you follow God, it's so much better.
That's right.
So we've seen how our how defogging our devotion, we need to be holy. And defogging our devotion, we need to be undivided. The last one I want to talk about is how defogging our devotion requires us to be authentic. Okay? In Psalms 24, verse 4, at the end of that verse, it says that you do not swear falsely. There's no deceit in you. And really what it is that we got to be authentic with God and got to be authentic with others. One of the best examples that show us and that gives us that, if I'm being honest, is Judas Iscariot. Let's get this. Look this. Follow me. Listen. Judas walked and did life with Jesus for 3 years. Okay? Judas was over the money. And get this. Judas was raggedy on the inside because he was a thief. He was a deceiver. And all the while he is walking with the Messiah, seen miracles, sat down at the table with Jesus, broke bread with him, laughed with him, got his feet washed by the king, and all the while betray him at the end. Had an opportunity and still could have repented and turned, but chose not to. Why? Because Judas wasn't authentic. He was not authentic in who he is. Judas had the disciples fooled. And you know he had the disciples fooled because Jesus said, when they were at the table, he said, one of y'all are going to betray me. And the disciples were like, well, who is it going to be? Is it me? Is it... All the while missing the point. Judas like, why are you giving that money to the poor? That girl don't want to do that. Listen, why she giving that to the, why she anointing Jesus' feet? They give to the poor. He's just lying. But get this. What's crazy is that they did not even see because he was not authentic. He was deceiving them. And if I'm being honest, we got the Judas effect in us. We put up the veneer. And we deceive a lot of people. We look like we apart. We think we got it going on. We put up the veneer. We come to church and look good, but all the while just to leave Jesus at the door or on your nightstand Monday through Saturday. And hear this now. Hear this now. Get this now. We don't have to. And what's disappointing in this, what's so disappointing is that many of us, what this is that many of us are walking with God, and I use this loosely, and we don't even see him. He's right there with us. He's present, but yet the fog sets in because we want to be inauthentic. We don't want to be real. We don't want to be real with what we feel, with the pains that we have, with the struggles that we have, with the insecurities that we have, with the sin that we struggle with. We don't want to be real with him, so we think that we're hiding from him all the while. And the worst thing that could ever happen is this, thinking that you're walking with the Lord and you turn out and find out you wasn't. Two practices that helps us to be authentic. Two practices I believe that will help us to be authentic here, especially as we live a life in our devotion to Jesus. One is the authentic confession. Authentic confession. Look on the board. It should be Psalms 51, verse 10. Look what it reads. It says, create in me a clean heart. Here's what this is. This is a practicing of asking in prayer to be able to create in me a clean heart, O God, and renew a steadfast spirit within me. Authentic confession, continually on your lips. When you're in your bed at night by yourself, when you're in your car stuck in traffic, create in me a clean heart, Lord. I know what I did, I wasn't right. Renew a steadfast spirit within me. When you just got through talking raggedy to some folks, God created me a clean heart. I'm messed up. I'm struggling. I'm hurting right now. Created me a clean heart, God. God did not treat me right. God, I didn't mean to go off, but I got tired of them taking advantage of me. Created me a clean heart, God. Renew a right spirit. You get what I'm saying? Our confession needs to be authentic. And get this, and that means and I love it. It blesses my heart that when I ask some of you all, how are you doing? Some of y'all are real. Y'all be like, man, I ain't doing too good. Versus where, how you doing? Oh, man, I'm good. We do blessed and highly favored. We good. All the while we leave and we start to weep in the car. Yeah. Authentic confession. Authentic confession. The next one is authentic adoration. Authentic adoration here. Understand, we're going to read in Hebrews chapter 12, verses 28 through 19. Here's this. Read this. Look at this. I want to read this for us. Look what it reads. It says, therefore, since we have received a kingdom that cannot be shaken. My God. You declared your life to one where the kingdom cannot be shaken. And I submit to you, America can be shaken. Just live in 2020 and it shook us to the core. But God's kingdom can't be shaken. It says, and because of that, let us give thanks. And so worship God acceptably with reverence and awe. Why? For our God is a consuming fire. My Lord. And what this idea is worship here. Worship, breaking down, really simple. It is to bow down in reverence, and also it is to kiss. That means that you are to bow down in reverence and kiss the ground of one who is mightier than you. And so therefore, I submit to you, why? Because he's a consuming fire, meaning that he's going to strip you of your pride and your self-consciousness and your self-consumption. He is a consuming fire. And I love that because many of us got to be authentic. The kingdom ain't gonna be shaken. And that's good news for you and I. There ain't nothing you do that can shake the kingdom of God, because Jesus said the gates of hell will not prevail. Because that's the power of the blood and what he did on the cross for us. And that's why we get to take the table every single day. We get to break the bread and we get to take the wine and the juice. I'm sorry, I got a little wine in me every now and then. That's my Presbyterian brothers and sisters. But you get what I'm saying? You know, we non-denominational. We gotta have juice over here. But we get to take the bread and the juice and we get to eat at the table and we get to authentically confess what we have done. And we get to have a complete authentic adoration and worship him. So you don't have to wait. You can do it now as we get ready to move forward here. And that is a beautiful thing. So when you go indulge in that, be authentic with your confession. Be authentic with your adoration. Even if you're like, God, I don't feel like it right now. Many of us subject our confession and our adoration to what we feel. Feelings don't do that. Feelings shouldn't keep you from being authentic. Because when you want something, you know how to be authentic. Here's what I'm saying. The beautiful thing about Florence Chadwick was that 2 months later, she got back in that same water. And this time, she finished. She got back in that water, swim that water, and she started, get this, the fog was still there. The fog came in, but you know what she did? She trusted her training. You know what happened? She had, her attention was focused and it was undivided. And you know what it is? She was authentically her. That means she said, I'm gonna get back up in this thing and I'm gonna do what I know what to do, and that is to swim. And she got in there, and you know what the beautiful thing is? She got in and she got to the shore and she beat it in record time. It took her, she got out at a half-mile mark out. The first time, 15 hours and 55 minutes. This time she completed it in 13 hours. So much so that she decided to do it again and swim both ways in another channel and do it again. Here's what I'm saying. There's good news for you, family of God. Get back in the water and swim. Get back in the water and swim. And when you get back in the water and swim, understand this. Trust the training that God has given you. So live holy. I'm telling you this. Be undivided. Stay focused on what you're doing. Don't jump back and forth. And get this. Be authentic. Be authentically you with your confession, with your adoration. And I submit to you today, when you cannot see the shoreline, trust the author of the fog and he will get you there. Let us pray.